Today on Gibbles and Bits, we're making a stuffed pork chop with a roasted red pepper cream sauce. Yes, you heard it right. I'm taking that noble swine, I'm stuffing it full of deliciousness and covering it with a whole batch of yummy. The most important part of any stuffed meat is the meat itself. As you can see here, I have two delicious cuts of pork chops. Nice and thick, nice and juicy. A little bit of fat on the top. Perfect for stuffing. Not a better combination has been discovered than pork and apples. I believe the Brady Bunch's nanny said it best. We're having some pork chops and apple sauce. That's right, pork chops stuffed with apples. And pears. And a parsnip. Yes, the weird looking yellow carrot that tastes like a potato dipped in sugar. It's the root from heaven. Every good chef that I've ever worked for has told me you only need two knives. You need a chef knife, you need a paring knife. The reason being is you can do pretty much everything you can think to do if you have a good chef knife and a good paring knife. They say it's not the size of the knife that matters, it's how you use it. First thing we're going to do is we're going to make our stuffing for our pork. So if you don't have a peeler and you feel like being a real man about it, you can go ahead and take your paring knife and give that apple a good old skinning. It's just like skinning a deer. You start from the outside, then you go to the inside. So there's a little known myth about Johnny Appleseed. So you guys know the whole hullabaloo about how he went around and planted apples and, did his thing out of his little brown sack. Well, they never tell you why. Well, I know why Johnny Appleseed did it. Because nothing gets the ladies going more than a man who can peel an apple and make it a cooking show at the same time. So for you boys out there struggling with that single life, you want to know how I landed me this beautiful girl, Lindsay. She saw me peel one apple and it was over after that. So take notes, boys. This is how you do it. Easiest way to core your apples is you want to cut them in half again, take your knife at an angle, and cut that core out. Now that we got those pesky cores out of there, what we're going to do is you just want to cut them into bite-sized pieces for your stuffing. Alrighty, you got your apple cut. Now it's time to peel your pear. Last time I was in Amsterdam, peeling your pear meant something completely different. It cost me $50. I've never been to Amsterdam. Now that you got your pear, wait, what do I call these? Plums? Peach plums? Plum. No, pear. Now that we got our pear peeled, it's time to pit our peeled pear. Now that we got our pear peeled, it's time to take the pit out of our peeled pear. But there's no pit. But for the 3 peas, I just had to. So cut it in half again, just like that. And you don't got to take nearly as much out on that one, just enough to get that little spitz on the bottom. So the last thing for our stuffing is this bad boy, known as the parsnip. I love parsnips. They are so good, and most people don't even know what they are. They look like a brown carrot, but they're sweet, they're kind of potatoey, and they're just so freaking good. So eat them. You can fry them, you can boil them. I wouldn't eat them raw. But anyway, you want to make sure you take off that skin. So if you want to use a peeler, go ahead. Or you can just use your paring knife and get that skin off. It's real thin, doesn't take much to get it off. So you can find these in your local parsnip section. Once you get them into strips, just give them a chop. Into the bowl it goes. So here's your stuffing. Only thing you want to add to this is a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. Now our stuffing's ready. Now that we have our stuffing made, it's time to make a hole to shove it into. Best way to make your pork stuffable is to do it this way. What you want to do is take your knife, put your meat on the board, go about in the middle and take your knife and shove it in there. So what you're going to do is you're going to keep your hole tiny, but you're going to kind of cut out the inside of your pork. So just kind of use your judgment. Shove your finger in there. Find out how you're doing. Buy at dinner. So you want to go a little bit at a time, because if you cut through the other side, you're going to be hating yourself later. So you just kind of keep cutting away till you get close to the edge and you feel like you got enough space to get your stuffing in. So it's as simple as opening up the hole and pushing it in. Like I said, you just open the hole and push it in. In case you missed it, open the hole and push it in. And now you have a stuffed pork chop. So now that we opened the hole and stuffed it in, it's time to bread our pork. So for breading, I used a 3-step process. Dry, wet, dry. I do a light coating of flour first, stick it in my egg wash, and then end on my breadcrumbs. The reason you do it that way is the flour lets the egg stick, and then the egg lets the breadcrumbs stick. And then it all comes together. So like I said, first thing you do, just give it a light dusting of flour. It really doesn't need a lot. So knock off the excess, and then hit it with the egg. Then try to knock off some of the excess, and then hit it with the breadcrumbs. So just hit it everywhere. Make sure that stays closed. And now they're ready to get fried. So when it's time to cook your pork chops, best thing to cook them in is, of course, the cast iron skillet. So what I like to do is I put peanut oil and butter together, because peanut oil has a higher smoking point, so you can cook higher without burning. And then butter, because it's butter and it has delicious flavor. So once both sides of your pork chops look like that, it takes about 1.5 minutes on each side. It's time to put it in the oven. One of the wonderful things about cast iron is it can go right from the top of the stove directly into the oven. And now it's time to make that sauce. Now that our pork's in the oven, getting all cookified, it's time to get our sauce going so everything comes together beautifully. So our sauce is super easy, but it's unbelievably delicious. I actually learned this one back in the culinary school days, and it just has withstood the test of time. So I use what's called cheater food on this one because it's super easy, and I actually like the way these taste. So shoot me. What these are roasted red peppers in a jar. They got a little bit of brine action going on, so they got a little bit of saltiness. So what you're going to need some roasted red peppers, garlic, chicken stock, a pan, some whiskey, a sharp knife, an open mind, and a positive attitude. So to our pan, we need a little bit of fat. So let's get our butter on. In the pan, the garlic goes. So after your garlic gets a little bit of sizzle, and you'll smell it, it'll be ready to go. Go ahead and add your red peppers. Yeah, that's right. Fall in love. So depending on how thick you want your sauce to be, you right now would either add some flour or not. I like my sauce to be a little bit on the thicker side, so I add a little bit of flour to kind of bring it together. So if you do add flour, you want to make sure you cook it a little bit to kind of cook out that starchy flavor, but that flour is going to give you a thicker sauce. Once you've let that flour cook a little bit, it's time to add your chicken stock. Now when you're adding this, you want to make sure you're whisking consistently, because you don't want a chunky sauce. Now you want to bring this up to a simmer. Now that our sauce has had a chance to come to a simmer, you'll notice that it's significantly thicker. That's the great thing about flour, is once it gets to a simmer, that's when the thickening properties actually come together. So now it's time to slowly whisk in our cream to our sauce. So once you get your cream all incorporated, bring it back up to a simmer. Alright, so our sauce is at a simmer and our pork is out of the oven. Now it's time to go the way of Halloween and Christmas and make them be the same thing. So we want to add our pork chops to our sauce so that those flavors can come together and really start to like each other. So just cover up the pork with that delicious sauce and kind of let it just soak it all in. So there's a bunch of different ways you can serve this meal. I chose to do pasta. So after you get your pasta on your plate, you want to cut your pork. Take your thing and just put it on top. Just like that. It's okay if it falls a little better or falls a little bit. We're all people here. Put that sauce on the top. I like to finish it off with just a little bit of Parmesan on the top. So the food is ready. I'm now out of whiskey. Thanks for tuning in. And like usual, I'm Gibbles. These are my bits. I'll see you next time. Bye.